Do you regulate? Then it may be time to innovate. Today's guest says that you should stop trying to catch people doing things wrong and encourage them to do the right thing the first time. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm John O'Leary. I'm the executive editor of Better, Faster, Cheaper, and I'm speaking today with Babak Armajani of the Public Strategies Group. Babak, thank you for being here today.
I'm glad to be here.
I want to ask you a little bit about the area of regulation. And what are some of the areas that government regulates?
Well, it could be the cleanliness of a restaurant, whether people stop at a red light or not. Environmental protection, clean water, clean air involves regulation.
So regulation is clearly a big area within public sector activities. What's the traditional approach to regulation been?
It's enforcement. So we promulgate a rule or regulation, then we inspect people to see if they're in compliance with that, and when we're not, we penalize them using due process.
So you're catching people doing the wrong thing seems to have been the traditional focus of the whole regulatory thinking in government.
Indeed, and it's very expensive.
Very expensive because due process, if someone challenges, you've either got to go through court or there's hearings, and it can be very, very costly, and it's confrontational, right?
Exactly.
So what is some of the different thinking that you would recommend around the area of regulation?
Well, first of all, you have to do enforcement. I'm not advocating abandoning enforcement.
Okay.
But there's 4 other strategies together with enforcement that provide a rich mix. The first is getting people to buy in to the change in the first place. So let's use an example of recycling. Why do people voluntarily recycle? Well, it's because they've been told, often by their children, that this is the right way to save the earth, and so they buy into it, and so people do something that you normally wouldn't like to do, which is plow through your garbage and sort things out.
Sort things out. I remember, too, the Don't Mess with Texas campaign was all about raising awareness of, hey, we Texans take care of our state, we don't pollute, and it's a much more cost-effective way of trying to get people to do the right thing than trying to catch someone who throws some garbage out of the car window, right?
Exactly.
Much more cost-effective. So the first strategy is to get buy-in. What's the second strategy?
Educate people on how to comply. Some systems are difficult and complicated, like paying your taxes, for example. Many of us have to get help because the tax system is so complicated. So with recycling, we educate people by putting out pamphlets, websites, various other forms of communication about the advantages of recycling.
So people can understand what they're supposed to do.
Exactly.
All right. What about another strategy? What's the third strategy that people can use for regulation?
You need to make it simple. You need to make it easy for people. They're much more likely to comply if it's easy. So, for example,
have you spoken to the IRS about this? Because they haven't got this memo.
Well, they have the short form,
okay,
which was their attempt at that. They didn't succeed very well on the rest of it. But we make it easy to recycle by providing people with bins to put their recycling in so that it's convenient.
It's convenient. Very good. And what's the last strategy?
Giving people feedback on the extent of their compliance. Because when people get feedback, they automatically try to improve. So in St. Paul, where I live, we pick up our garbage in the back, in the alley.
Okay.
But we put our recycling in the front. And I don't know if this was deliberately contrived or not, but when I get up on a Friday morning to put out my recycling and it's freezing cold, 10 below zero, and I'm there in my bathrobe and slippers, and I take the recycling and I set it on the front curb, the first thing I do is I look around at my neighbors to see if I see all those blue bins there.
Very
and
good.
Of course, I don't want them to look at my house and not see a blue bin there. That's a form of feedback.
A form of feedback. Another form of feedback that you mentioned earlier was in traffic enforcement. Instead of just having very expensive police officers out there writing tickets for catching people, there's those speed signs.
Yeah, those electronic signs that show you, don't you slow down when you run into one
and
of
it
those?
makes you think about how fast you're driving versus what the speed limit is.
Exactly.
There's no enforcement per se, but it's a feedback mechanism about how you're doing compared to how you're supposed to be doing.
Right, and those strategies combined with enforcement in those cases where people are flagrantly not following the regulation is less expensive, it's less burdensome on the complier, and you actually get higher levels of compliance.
Higher levels of compliance. So it's reshifting the thinking from the enforcement bureau thinking that our goal is to catch people doing things wrong to our goal is to get as many people as we can voluntarily, accurately complying with the rules, and then enforcing it only in those cases where that's not happening.
Voluntary compliance is easier and cheaper.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Babak Armajani of the Public Strategies Group, looking at innovation, particularly in the area of regulation. Thank you very much.